How's it going, folks? It's Keaton here, and in this video we're going to talk about the evolution of your marketing agency. It's a very interesting topic. I actually reached out to a few of my coaching students and asked them what they would be interested to hear about on the channel, or what they thought people who aren't coaching students would be interested in hearing about. And this was one that came up that I thought was an interesting topic that we should cover. So what we're going to talk about today is how you go from zero to, let's say, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month, and what are the differences in the business model, and also what are the differences in what you're offering at those different revenue levels. How do you actually scale up to this point where it's pretty sustainable and you become a business owner instead of just working in the business? It's a really interesting topic and it's a good one to cover, so I'm glad you're here today. First of all, as a disclaimer, I have to talk about the fact that this is an example of how it could go. Something that I've recently started noticing the importance of is the differences depending on the niche that you're in. A quick example is I had a friend in a coaching program and he was working with dance studios. And dance studios, they make decent money, but they don't make as much money as, say, a dentist or maybe a real estate agent who makes $40,000 in commissions from one sale. And so he was trying to find a way to deliver something to these dance studios because the marketing, the Facebook ads worked really great for them, but they couldn't afford the fee that he wanted to charge every month. So what he ended up doing is coming up with a done with you solution where he set up the ads and then he gave them a course so they could continue running the ads. And then he kind of has a coaching program along with that. That was a great solution for his market because he listened to them. And then he also saw like, okay, I'm just not going to be able to sell at as high of a price point as I want. How can I offer something that's one time, I think it was like $5,000 one time or $2,500 one time and then $500 a month. How can I offer something like that to my audience and that they'll just jump on? He was really struggling before he decided to switch that done with you model, and then he just blew up after that. So all of this to say that you can pivot any way you want. You can literally sell anything to anyone as long as they want it. And that's the beauty of capitalism, and that's the beauty of starting a marketing agency, is you don't have to be just a purely service-based thing. You could be coaching with a service, or you could be purely coaching. All of these things fit together, and it's just a matter of how you want to position them. All right, so with all of that said, let's talk about how you actually go about growing from that $0 to $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 months. The first thing we need to talk about comes from a book called Good to Great. It's one of my favorite business books. I recommend it to anyone. In the book Good to Great, he talks about these, I think it was around 10 companies that outperformed everybody else in their industry over a course of 10 or 15 years. They did all this data and studying to make sure that it was just the companies who were okay and then had become great companies due to whatever it was they did in the time that they became great, right? Then they studied what it was that they did. And there were two key concepts that came out of this that I want to share with you today. And the first one is the hedgehog concept. So for each of these amazing companies, they also had a comparison company which didn't do as great during the same time period. And in the amazing companies, they realized that their strategy was more like a hedgehog. So a hedgehog is small, it basically just does one thing. It's not super fancy. And if you were to put a hedgehog in a race, basically all it would do is just walk forward. It wouldn't be able to go super fast, but it would be very steady. Then they compared that hedgehog to a fox, which was, these comparison companies were more like foxes. They were really fast and they would just dart around and they would do different things all the time. They could go really fast in a race, but they would probably get distracted and maybe change strategies a few different times along the way. So in Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about how the hedgehog companies are much more successful in the long term because of a concept called the flywheel strategy. So the best way to think about the flywheel concept is to think about one of those merry-go-rounds. When you play with one of those merry-go-rounds, you're pushing and it seems like when you first start, nothing is happening and you're going super, super slow. And then eventually start speeding up, you start speeding faster and faster and faster until you can jump on, and the momentum of the merry-go-round just carries you around. Building a company is very, very similar to that. And what happens when you have a fox-like strategy is you go this way with the flywheel, and then you stop and you go the other way, and then you do it again. And every time you switch directions, you have to regain the momentum that you had before. Now compare that with a hedgehog, which just keeps going in the same direction, slowly but surely, again and again and again. That's how to have success long-term in business. This also reminds me of the book Atomic Habits, which talks about becoming 1% better every day. And it goes back to something that I tell my coaching students all the time, to just take the next comfortable step. You could see yourself here at $0 a month with your marketing agency and try to, picture getting to $50,000 a month. But there's so many steps in between 0 and 50 that you just have to make sure you focus on that next step. then the next one, then the next one. Focus on making $1,000 a month, then 2,000, and that will seem much more manageable for you as you keep progressing. So what I want to do in the rest of this video is talk about each stage of pushing that flywheel. What does it look like when you're barely moving? Then what does it look like when you're moving a little bit faster? And then once things are spinning, how should it look? So the first stage of pushing that flywheel is being a freelancer. A freelancer is somebody who sells time for money. There's nothing wrong with that, and pretty much everybody has to start out here. This is the period of heaviest growth. Personally, you're going to be learning a lot, and it's going to be a lot of work on your plate because not only are you in charge of servicing the client, keeping the client happy, maintaining the relationship with the client, you're also going to be in charge of finding new business for your company, which becomes pretty exhausting after a while. My biggest piece of advice while you're in this stage is to keep services as simple as possible, because the more complex things you throw in there, the more custom work you're doing for clients, the worse off you're going to be and the less clients you'll be able to handle before you need to hire somebody. And just to give you an example, after the first 3 clients that I brought on board, I really wasn't doing that much custom work for. I was totally maxed out. I felt like I couldn't keep going, finding new business and servicing these 3 clients at the same time. Now, some people, depending on what you're fulfilling and how you do it, might be able to handle tons more clients than that. But me, someone who's a relatively new Facebook advertiser and was just stressing out about how everything was going with each of these clients, I could really only handle 3. So that's when I transitioned to the second step of pushing the flywheel, where things started to go a little bit faster when I hired my first person. So when you're first hiring, it's smart to start with a contractor instead of a full-time employee, because likely you're not making enough to actually pay a full-time employee. And also, when you work with a contractor, it's easier to find someone who has a lot more experience and values being self-employed and is willing to work on your accounts and can do the work very effectively, rather than somebody who's full-time and you have to worry about filling their schedule and who may or may not have great experience. They might say they do, or you might have to feel like you have to train them. I remember when I was starting, I knew I needed to find someone who was better than me at Facebook ads because I just didn't really know what I was doing. I knew to a degree and I was getting decent results for the clients I had at the time, but I knew if I wanted to scale, I really needed more people on my team that knew more than me. And I put an Upwork post up that outlined the job description of working with the clients that I already had. And I said, hey, for these 3 clients, I'll pay you $1,000 a month to manage everything. You don't have to talk to the client. You don't have to do anything except run the ads and make sure that the campaigns are successful. I had quite a few people apply for the job. I interviewed 2 of them and I gave test projects to both of them. One fulfilled the test project, he did pretty well, but kind of missed the point of it. And one did an amazing job on the test project, and I could tell that we just really got along as people. So I decided to go with him. He is amazing. We've been working together for almost 3 years now. I ended up getting really lucky on that first hire. He was amazing. He really helped me scale my agency. And believe it or not, we still have those 3 original clients that I brought on at the very beginning of my agency, still running ads with us, which is pretty cool. So the point of moving into this next stage of the flywheel, which I call being a manager and having a contractor, is so that it frees up your time to go find more business. So once Chaz came on board, that was my media buyer, I said, awesome. Now I can, first of all, I took a vacation because I've been working so hard. And then I said, okay, all I want to do is fill up his schedule. And then I said, okay, I'm going to pay him $400 a month for every single client I bring on to do the media buying and all that stuff. So I'm going to go find some more clients so that he can run the ads for them, and so we can both be successful together. Some other tips when it comes to this manager and contractor stage is to keep in mind that you should still have very simple services. You're going to be refining a lot of things like your onboarding process, setting expectations for clients. All of the important things that lead them to have success down the line need to be refined. And so if your services are very complex, it's going to complicate everything else. So you need to make sure you just keep everything simple on the fulfillment side, so when somebody comes on board, so that you can nail down all of the other systems as you bring on new clients. And then another thing you'll be doing during this process is writing down and documenting all of your client fulfillment processes. So how to make the ads, how to write the copy, how to make the landing page if you're doing that, or the messenger bot if you're doing that. You want to make sure you document all of these processes with your contractor so that when you transition to the next stage of the flywheel, you've got training resources for a full-time employee who would be managing all of your accounts. So this brings us to the third stage of the flywheel, which is being a true business owner, or more like an owner operator. And that's where you have somebody that's a full-time employee trained on your system, running ads for your clients, communicating with your clients, and being the face of your company once you sell them. Once you get to this point, you probably have prospecting and sales systems in place, where you feel comfortable scaling up even farther past that. So every single time you reach capacity when it comes to your full-time employee, for example, let's say they can handle 20 accounts without being completely overwhelmed. You get them on those 20 accounts, and then once they're feeling very maxed out, you hire another account manager, someone else to run the ads, and they work together, split that client load, and then you max them both out and keep going from there. Now, there's a lot of other random things that you have to learn in this stage, like payroll taxes and whether you're going to offer benefits and how much you're going to pay your full-time employees, motivating your full-time employees, training them, all sorts of things that will really throw you into the fire where you have to learn or else you're going to get burned. Also, during this stage, you'll likely have contractors doing things like graphic design for you, maybe somebody doing prospecting like a virtual assistant, transcribing things, copywriting, I don't know, whatever it is you want to outsource to a contractor, you totally can at this point. But I very highly recommend having at least one full-time employee that can help you manage talking to the clients, because that can take a lot of time. So I mentioned there's a lot of random, weird, potentially boring things to learn in this stage, but this is also where it gets super exciting, because now your time is not coupled to your income. Every new client you bring on, you make more money and your workload increases a little bit, not a lot. You have someone who's signed a contract to work for you full time and you're giving them that work, and they're happy because they're doing work they love, and you're happy because you're running your agency, fulfilling that dream. Other things that might happen during this stage are playing with tweaking your offer. So you could say, all right, we're doing completely done for you right now. What if we had a done with you option as well, and offering that on sales calls and seeing if the people like the done with you, and maybe do a $5,000 setup and then $500 a month, and then it's a much lower maintenance client going forward. Or maybe you experiment with adding follow-up services and appointment setting to your agency. That's what I did. I noticed that a lot of people, very poor, very bad at calling the leads that we were generating for them. So we said, okay, we'll do it ourselves. We hired somebody on and they did the follow-up, scheduling the appointments directly into the practice management softwares of our clients. There's literally a million different ways that you could take your agency once you get to this point, and it just feels like a playground. It's super fun, and I highly encourage you to do whatever it takes to get to that point, because honestly, I wake up every day and I'm just like, well, let's try this thing. If it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, then we're making more money and I'm happy. It just feels like I get paid to learn every single day instead of paying to learn, which is really awesome. I highly recommend it. Guys, I really hope this video has been beneficial for you. It was super fun to make. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and make sure to book a coaching call if you're interested by visiting the link in the description. And with all of that said, we'll see you next time.